show being modest. Now it's grams of the wax for my conscience. Bron James in LA, you're on college. I've been jumping on them planes like a hobby. Still moving with the pack like my partners. Shut the John on them jets cause we wildin'. But the bowl is a party on the island. Moment of silence. So good, get back to the topic. Grew up, it was me and Flocka. Grandma's and Big T, this my mama. I ain't even for the pain when my pots flip. Knew his name, that's it, never bothered. Mom said, you the man, son, you got this. Ever since I found a way to go and pop shit. Hold up, blaze through a whole zip. Took a seat at the table of my first flip. Days in red roof with my first whip. Split the money with the gang, never post pics. Seen a change in the game, had to coach it. Never let them take my wangs in the mold, bitch. Ever made in a month, nigga. Used to serve him at the minute, just the front, nigga. Goddamn. Had to grow up quick, I made my own rules. Had my first child, got it jumping with music. Can't really hang with nobody who losing. I thought by now that you would go and get it, but I could hardly see niggas as distant. Know you get cropped if you not in the picture. And I made that tag and went got a bag. Shots to the Henny and OG prescriptions, put rebel shit on the map. Took a leap from where I started at. Started ballin' now I'm Chris Paul and Cats. Got him steady calling for the mold, but I'm on a roll, gotta call him back. And that's all fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. All carry-on items should now be stowed securely, either in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. All aisles, exits, and bulkhead areas should now be clear. All electronic devices should now be turned off and stowed, as they may interfere with the aircraft's navigational and communication systems. Once airborne, we'll let you know when you may use approved electronic devices, but note that some items may not be used at any time during the flight. You'll find a list of approved devices in the in-flight information section.
Gang, can I have your attention for a very special public service announcement? We are taking over the internet because the United States champion of word wrestling entertainment has returned for another edition of the Pocket Locker podcast. Of course, I am your host with the most all the way from the East Coast, and as always, I am in airplane mode. I've got a great show lined up for you this evening. Please go ahead and greet your neighbor, grab a seat, grab something to drink. It is time to kick back, catch a vibe, and link up with the gang. Let's jump into the musical portion of the program. Hey, none. Such a good song. Cheers, gang. I don't know why it's so jumpy. I think it's because I was trying to gather originally. I fucked up the frame rate. That's all right. Sounded all right. Alrighty, gang. Let's go ahead and take off on this shit. Now, before we jump into our main event, we are going to hear from your former president, Donald J. Trump, who was arraigned today because he's a criminal. I don't what the fuck you want me to tell you? He's a crook. Why else you think the fuck he was arraigned? They ain't arraigned him because he ordered cupcakes for breakfast. He has been indicted and arraigned. And the crazy thing is, first off, gang, if you look it up, technically, this man is facing like over 600 years in prison. Like it. At this point, the number might as well be a joke because it's actually comical. It's somewhat hyperbolic at this point. It's like he's really trying to make a statement. But beyond that, you have people coming out of their face already, the Marjorie Trader Greens of the world, and basically saying, I will vote for Trump even if he is in prison. Do y'all remember a time when people would not run for office because they had been divorced? Gang, please go fuck yourself. Don't make me tagging Stephanie Helms. Stephanie Helms, I'm sure many people, I'm not Uncle Bobby, a lot of people, you don't gotta be you what? I'm like 30. Look, if you like 20 years ago, if you like 30 plus, you come on now. If you like 30 plus, you really do. We lived through a time, y'all, when people would not run for office because they got divorced. Now we live in a time when senators and congressional people from the U.S. House of Representatives are literally telling us they will vote for this felon if he is convicted and in prison for orchestrating a goddamn insurrection and defrauding the United States of America. I don't even know. What do you say to that? What do you say to people like this? There's no bottom to people like this. There's no reason, there's no rationality. But look, let's hear from this man Trump, prisoner number 45. Here we go.
Thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America.
All right, pause the tape. See, I told you everything out this man's mouth is a lie, and you already know that. I got to say something. As a former American, y'all know that I identify with this country, but as a former American, this is a great day in America. This is a great day in America. He thinks this is a travesty. I think this is necessary. The only thing I want to see from Donald J. Trump is Donald J. Trump in an orange jumpsuit, brighter than the orange of his own goddamn skin that he was born into. Like, you know what, Mr. President? You have looked like absolute dog shit in everything you have worn ever, but there's something about that orange that really complements your complexion, gotta say.
And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings.
Bruh, you facing federal charges. You are the first president to ever be indicted, and you've been indicted 3 times. Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 17? Who can keep up? Look, this man belongs on the Mount Rushmore of criminal presidents. Y'all come on now. Y'all know Trump's monkey ass Trump's monkey ass should not be allowed to get a fucking ticket to look at Mount Rushmore. Trump should not be able to Google photos of Mount Rushmore on his goddamn phone. Okay. But he should, Stephanie came up with a really good idea, which is we should put his ass in a Stone Mountain, Georgia or whatever, and put him up there with the rest of the Confederate traitors. That's where he really belongs. But look, you could do like, Clinton, because he did, have a little bit of some legal problems when he was president. George Bush's grandfather, great, he was related to Pierce going to bed. He had some scandals, so you could put him up there, then maybe Nixon, because we really thought that was some real shit. There might be a couple of sneak up there, but then you could have President Trump right up there, big bust, huge, just right up in the forefront, towering over everyone. The most criminal president ever. Congratulations. Look at what you've accomplished in life.
And walls and the graffiti. This is not.
But look, he really thinks he's going to distract us. He really thinks he's going to distract us, bro. You are facing over 600 years in criminal charges, bro. You are a felon on top of a felon on top of a felon. Bro, do you know how much lawyers hate each other? A lot. Do you know how busy lawyers are? Very busy. Do you know how much time lawyers spend working with lawyers from other states on other cases? Little to none. Yo monkey ass is in so much trouble. All the prosecutors going to have to go to a fucking 3-day conference just to schedule your goddamn prosecutions. Well, you want to, but you want them. You trying to make sure you get them. You said quickly, so that's 30 days. That's 90 days for you. Okay, but I need 90 days. But he wants 2 years of discovery. But there's a million documents over here. But y'all got 70 charges coming. 70 charges? Did you say 70 charges? Gang, they gonna have a fucking assistant prosecutors running around. It's going to be the most stressful legal conference in the history of America, and the only fucking thing on the agenda is going to be figuring out how to fucking coordinate and synchronize and choreograph Donald Trump's goddamn prosecute. That's how much trouble this man is in.
Place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers.
Fuck Trump derangement syndrome. Trump has Trump persecution complex, and it's so good how he just goes straight to the apologetic punchlines. Straight to the apologetic. We're being persecuted. Just like we're about to talk about how Christians feel so persecuted because they insist that everybody hear their goddamn message. We heard your goddamn message. Now we finna tell you how much that message sucks ass. That is not persecution. It's just proper feedback. That's all it is. And Donald Trump is getting the same. And look, Trump's whole life has been criminal. Trump's whole candidacy was a disaster. The list of things this man should be in prison for literally probably knows no end. But all he had to do was like not defame somebody he had severely screwed over and victimized and like basically ruined her life. All you gotta do is just don't say shit about that woman in public. Just who EJ and Carol, nothing to say, no comment, no comment. See how easy that was? That's all he had to say was nothing. Bro, man, all you had to do was not steal classified documents from the shits that was marked classified, top secret, don't show to anyone under any circumstance. Yeah, that shit. Yeah, all you had to do was do what everybody else in America seems to do so well, which is leave work at work. Like, this nigga really took classified documents. Like, when people was reading his story, writing his biography and shit, like they wasn't really gonna believe he was president. Like, he couldn't show him a pen, a coaster, some laws he had vetoed, some racist shit he had said during a news conference in the press room. None of that would suffice as evidence that he was really, really president of the United States. Trust me, Trump, we have a hard time believing it too. This man actually needed top secret classified documents. Trump, please go fuck yourself. All you had to do was, accept that Joe Biden won the election because I hate to break it to you, but how do I say this nicely? Yeah, it seems like Joe Biden won the election. So that's all you had to do. That's all you had to do, and we would not be having this conversation. You could have got away with so much shit. Donald Trump, you could have really. All right, let's keep it real, y'all. Without these charges, this recent spate of indictments, Donald Trump actually could have gone down as a legend. I'm not, look, I told y'all, I'm not an American, I'm not a patriot, but let's keep it very real about Americans and America. America is a land that loves trashy people. Right? American, look at all the movies. Half our movies, the hero is the fucking bad guy. Yeah, we make all sorts of movies now where the hero's some fucking drugged out, crazy person who's doing some vindictive, wild ass, murdery shit that should land people literally like their own set of 500 years in prison. And we're just like, oh, what's so great, man? That just fucking, we love that shit. People that just blow it all up, watch it all burn to the ground. Americans are into that shit. Trump would have gone down as a legendary gangster, like a legendary OG, like a man who frauded and defrauded his way to the White House, y'all. To the White House, who crimed the whole time. The man, I mean, to his credit, the man made his bones in New York real estate. I'm not talking flipping fucking brownstones, y'all. I'm talking about skyline rearranging type of real estate deals. And all he had to do was like not the craziest, wildest shit in American history. And he would have got away with pretty much the craziest and wildest shit in American history. But Trump he knows no end. He knows no limits. And so he literally did the dumbest shit that like, now he just, it don't matter no more. Trump is over. It don't count no more, bro. You lost all your G, all your hood, all your hood passes about to get revoked. Gangsters don't go out like this, man. I'm just telling you, I'm just keeping it real, y'all. America loves a gangster, but gangsters don't go out like this. They don't just giving shit away to the government, committing government crimes under surveillance, confessing to them shit on social media, bro, trying to steal elections. And like, bro, gangsters don't do that shit, bro. You lost your gangster card, Trump.
In the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat them, you persecute them or you prosecute them.
You persecute them or you prosecute them.
Thank you very much.
I wish.
Thank you very much. This is
That was beautiful. What a desperate, sad man. Gang, Trump is a desperate, sad man. Now, speaking of desperate, sad people, gang, it is time to jump into the main event of the evening. And we are going to be talking about my least favorite subject. Gang, you already know we talk about Christianity. Now, the video that I've been saving up for y'all for a while, and we're going to jump into it, is from Wisecrack, and it is called... That's not it. That's the one. It's called "Is Religion Dead?" Now, I'm going to just go ahead and answer this question off the top, the tippity top, with an emphatic yes and an emphatic no. By no, I simply mean that religiotards are everywhere, and for the signs of it, they are not going anywhere. They're like parasites. Like before you erect some defenses, they've already taken over. By the time you see one or two, you've already lost the battle to the infestation. It's already over. Okay? Religiotards are just they're like the fucking E. coli of the human ecosystem. They are just everywhere, okay? And it'll never die because they're so committed to dying in their damn cults. But let's flip on over and focus a little bit more attention on the emphatic yes. This is a thing that just irritates me, and it really grinds my gears. We are not having an honest conversation about religion. That honest conversation needs to start with, there's no honest way to be religious. It's over. It's done. The world has simply moved on. In the light of reason, in the light of empiricism, in the scientific era, in the age of the internet and beyond, we just don't do myths like this. Please, I'm so sick of everybody playing along with this fucking fairy tale. I'm even more sick of people pretending that the people who insist that we play along with this fairy tale, that they somehow deserve to be honored, praised, and esteemed as the honest people in the room, the most graceful people in the room, the most humble people in the room. They're assholes who are lying, and we should either tell them, hey, look, we're trying to correct you. Please accept this correction. Refusing to accept correction about something this obvious will just make you a liar. And that's the point we're getting to. Gang, the honest intellectual side of Christianity and religion is like the economic freedom side of slavery. It's just an oxymoron. It doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. And that's basically how we need to approach religion. I don't really care. Look, I pick on Christianity the most because, unfortunately, again, I'm a former American. I was raised in this piece of shithole country. And most of the people that piss me off with their religious bullshit in this country happen to be Christian. I also happen to be a former Christian. I was raised by Christian. Most of my family is still Christian. And Christianity has rendered them pretty much intellectually worthless. It's also made them dishonest people, particularly narcissistic, quite abusive. And so, yeah, I take the Christianity shit a little personally, because that's how I feel about it. I would like to say it ruined my family. My real thoughts are it is currently continuing to ruin my family in irreparable ways. So, yeah, I just want to put that out there because sometimes, Christians get a little in their feels and they think Christianity is theirs to talk about. And if you're not a Christian, why do you talk about Christians so much? If you're not religious, why are you always? Please go fuck yourselves, Christian. You learn a little bit about my history, my backstory with your religion. I have the right to make fun of that shit the rest of my life. And for the rest of my life, I will keep my foot on the gas and my foot up Christianity's ass. All right, gang. Now let's go ahead and jump into this thing about is religion dead? But Christians, please just understand. Look, I could be one of those. You want me to be one of those YouTubers? I could be one of those YouTubers that just fucking strings it all out and then says, I'll give you my thoughts at the end, and then make like a 9,200 hour video, and then at the end be like, well, in conclusion, there's a little bit of yes and a little bit of no, and let's summarize my main points, and then give you another 30 minutes at the, but I'm not even gonna do it. I'm just keeping it real up. Christians, there's no way. There's no, it's over. It's over. That cat is out of the bag. It's done. Isn't that, look, we're never going to like find the piece of evidence. We're like, oh God, oh my goodness. This right here proves it. This can of beer I'm drinking right here. Holy shit, it's the discovery of the millennium. It turns out evolution is wrong and the earth is young, and the morality in the Bible is ultimate, and it turns out it really is okay to genocide people if God tells you to. And you know, it turns out that being gay is really an abomination. Who the fuck knew? Oh, it's over. It's over, Christians. It's over. It really is over. Like, you really need to understand that. You're never, Christianity's never making a comeback. Now you might fuck around and like do some new crusade shit. That's what y'all are really about. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it. Oh, gang, y'all want to keep it real? All right, let's keep it real. Christians realize that they've lost. That's why they're always talking about the goddamn culture war, because they realize they've lost the fucking culture. They fucking lost. And so what are they doing instead? They're doing the new crusades. They can't come around door to door chopping everybody's heads off who won't believe. That's bad PR. So now they're just trying to, basically dominate the legislature, take over the Supreme Court, pass legislation to ban anybody that doesn't look like them, live like them, and want to worship God the way they want to worship God. And you know who does that? Fucking losers. People who have no evidence for the shit they believe and can't convince anyone of their beliefs because their beliefs are not true. That's who does that. Fucking insecure losers who know that they're wrong. All right, gang, let's go ahead and jump into this video. Ooh, I'm having too much fun.
Hello, my name is Michael Burns. I was raised religious, and I also like philosophy. What should I do? Because it seems like ever since philosophy got rolling,
you should jump off a bridge. It would look, gang. Please, YouTube, please don't cancel my channel for threatening. I'm not threatening him. I'm trying to give him some advice. Look, I've just had a brain filled up with all that religious nonsense. It is very difficult to live through. And then you pile on that being born a philosopher and just having to overthink everything. And well, what about the axiology of your ontology? About the epistemology? No, I'm out. No, I'm checking out of life. All right. Maybe just find a new hobby, learn a video game, learn how to play an instrument, get a new hobby. Maybe get a new hobby is a little bit less extreme of a way out of this dilemma he's found himself in. But we're live, gang. I just got to go with what comes to mind in the moment.
it's often been at odds with religion. My guy Socrates was executed by the state largely because he didn't believe in the gods. Spinoza was put into exile for equating God with nature, and later thinkers like Feuerbach, Nietzsche, Marx, and Freud questioned religion as a whole. And in recent years, a lot of public intellectuals have made whole careers out of being fired up atheists. For many of these folks, religion and critical thought are just fundamentally at odds, with the latter representing.
Also, hang on a sec. Can we get back to this crowd? Gang, we are part of a new wave of atheism and secularity in this country, because this cannot be our representatives. I mean, it just can't. All right, let's start up with the main man, Hitch. You know, Hitch, intellectual hero of mine and probably many of yours, but Hitch is gone. He is gone. he cannot do anything for us in this current times that we are living through. And beyond that, my man had a little bit of a hard right-wing bent to him at the end, and it's a bit problematic. And nope. We think things don't need to just become less God in this country. They need to become way more progressive, way over to the left. I make no secrets about it, gang. We are some lefty. I'm a left-handed lefty over here. Richard Dawkins. Now I know a lot of y'all are thinking that it'd be inappropriate for me to super kick Richard Dawkins in the face because he doesn't look like he'd be much in the ring. We'll just put it that way. But gang, the vile shit that has been coming out of that man's mouth lately, he's getting the Rebecca Davis treatment. I'm just chucking his ass off the top of the Titantron. Is that a 20-foot fall? Not my responsibility. It's pay-per-view, baby. Whoop! Right off the, and oh my God, he's dead. That's right. That's what the commentators would say. Like, gang, you like some brutal shit. Like just straight whoop off the top of the Titantron, like, right? And it's always gonna be holy shit. Fucking Dave Meltzer's gonna give the match 5 stars and shit. The most violent shit he's ever seen in wrestling. Like, they're gonna be like, it looked so real. It looked like he had no regard for that man's life, and he just tossed him off the top of a 20-foot Titantron. That shit looked so real. The way his body hit the ground and just fucking vaporized into a million pieces. Out of the special effects in the word wrestling entertainment, they really do it up with the special effects. Sam Harris, man. Nah, Sam Harris is actually going strong in terms of speaking out about religion, but Sam Harris also is just not really where we need him to be in terms of progressive issues, right? He needs to simmer down on the philosophy bro stuff and get a little bit more grounded in what's going on in reality. And Bill Maher, Mr. I just gave a blowjob to Jordan Peterson on my podcast because Jordan Peterson is the sexiest man alive. Bill Maher. Stephanie, please tell me you're not satisfied with this representation of atheism. Stephanie.
Hello.
Hey, Steph. Can you hear us? We can hear you. You're good.
Yes.
Please tell me these are not your guys.
I just want to say, Jay, that tonight, Dr. Dawkins decided that he would, on his channel, interview Jordan B. Peterson, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. So we've got another little bit of a feature with Dickie D being a Dickie. Exactly.
I
mean, look, it's I just did a whole thing on how Dawkins, Mr. Biology, gets even the biology wrong. And
that's what I'm saying.
It's like, geez, crow, dude. It's like, and I'm a fucking sailmaker. And that's like, what are you talking about? I'm really disappointed in these. But then again, I don't think any of this stuff has to do with atheism, really. But I do think it has to do with hangovers, right? Cultural hangovers of some of the stuff brought to us by Christianity, which, among other things, involves patriarchy, rigid gender specifications, rigid sexual frameworks, all of this stuff. And here's an evolutionary biologist trotting this bullshit out. Here's a philosopher trotting this bullshit out. It's so disappointing. And Bill Maher, I mean, is he's an entertainer and he's a comedian and he's what he is. And he's always been an idiot. He's always done it for the yucks.
Yeah,
Hitchens is dead. So what are we gonna do? But then again, Hitchens back in the day was a foursquare supporter of the United States mission against Saddam Hussein.
right. Yeah, he definitely had some controversial takes that right now would not be helpful, and I'm a bit concerned if he were still alive. He might be on that same tip right now, right? Which is you know, let's not speculate too much about the dead.
Don't speak ill of the dead well, you can. I'll speak ill of the dead when they were alive, which is to say, he was full of shit, being a Blairite. Bang, bang, bang. Let's crush Saddam Hussein, a secular guy, by the way. You know,
yes,
it's not. Personally, I think that the Islamic State is somewhat worse than the Ba'ath Party. They're both terrible, but I'd rather the Ba'ath Party than a theocratic replacement thereof.
yeah. And
I don't know why people thought that our invasion of Iraq was going to lead to the secular democratization of the Middle East, and that was absolutely bullshit to begin with. No, you're just going to unleash the forces of fundamentalism in Islam and cause us even more problems in coming down the road. It's just dumb.
Yeah, and now it's almost like we've come full circle, because now a lot of the right wing Christo-fascists are openly admiring Islam in particular because of how they've dealt with the woke. You know, how they've crushed the coloreds and the women's and the queers without any apology. You know, and so now they're again.
And the thing about Maher is, like, he is part of that older generation. Here I am at 70 years old, Todd saying that Bill Maher, who's 55 or something, whatever, he's part of that generation that thinks that it's funny to poke fun at drag queens. I mean, it's like he's like a Uncle Milty was funny when I was 2. It's go fuck yourself, all you people. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Get
so this is not our. We need some better representation. The other thing I'm gonna say too is this is the white boy problem, and I'm not saying kick the white boys out the room. Matter of fact, invite more of them in. But it's time for them to come in and hear from and listen to some other perspectives. There have always been non-American, non-white, non-male, non-cis voices that are incredibly important. I myself have had to like go out of my way to do homework and find who are Black atheists and who are some of the important Black atheists in history. And some of the names will blow your mind, actually, but the representation is missing. And the reason I say this too is there are consequences. On one hand, it leads to the white boy problem. It leads to the problem of we cannot create a more diverse, secular, egalitarian, humane society for all of us if only some of us are allowed to be the official representatives of reality, right? Because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like these guys get to be the champions of rationality and reasonable thought, and what is everybody else like not worthy to be part of this conversation? And then on the flip side, this is the shit that me and Uncle Bobby talk about, where people walk up to you And just because they see the chocolate complexion, they automatically assume you're a Christian. Why is that? Because Black people aren't atheists. And yes, part of that is too many Black people are Christians and there's not enough Black atheists. But another part of it is, if atheism is never represented by people of color, then it never looks like a thing people of color do. And it's the same thing for women and queer fam, and you know, we're recapitulating those same institutionalized prejudices, and it's just not going to serve us, and it's already not, because when I see these guys, I'm going, nope, definitely not it. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that W.B. Du Bois, though not vocal about it, did not harbor. You certainly didn't feature any particular God belief in his activism. And if you want to talk about one of the heroes of Black liberation, W.B. Du Bois was foundational in all of that stuff. I mean, he was an amazing human being, truly an amazing human being.
Agreed.
Bayard Ruskin was a Quaker, as I recall, and queer.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right, let's roll the tape.
Individuals have made whole careers out of being fired up atheists. For many of these folks,
all right. So the reason, sorry, real quick, the other reason I paused on that, gang, was to say that do those people seem fired up? Like, they've made their things, but they're not. At this point, when you hear Bill Maher talk, he's leaning so hard to the conservative right. You know, the same for Richard Dawkins. It's like you forget that these people were talking about religious people. For instance, they're you know, almost to a man, Harris included, they've got these weird ideas where they're going to pick and choose which rights trans people get to have. And it's like, hey, did you not notice the religious motivation at the core of this entire thing? And so that's your fired up atheist, the people who want to kowtow to right-wing talking points and set up the same, like I said, recapitulate the same marginalizations over again. Those are the people who are they're nah. Those people have gone soft.
And critical thought are just fundamentally at odds, with the latter representing reason and the former faith. So, in the year of our Lord 2023, is there any point in taking religion seriously? Doesn't philosophy render religion as useful as VHS tapes? Or is this whole debate a false dichotomy distracting us from much more interesting questions? We're going to explore it with the help of the subfield of philosophy that dares to take both perspectives seriously, the philosophy of religion. So let's find out once and for all if you should be ashamed of your religious upbringing in this Wisecrack edition on philosophy and religion. Friends or enemies? Let's start with philosophy, which in the most minimal sense is a type of inquiry in which we use reason to say what is true and why it's true. Now, some might think that this very definition precludes religion from having any overlap with philosophy, and some have absolutely challenged the idea that religion is rational. Now, Socrates famously criticized traditional conceptions of the ancient Greek gods, arguing that there had to be some type of higher good than these squabbling weirdos, because if not, truth boils down to a cosmic game of he said, she said. Now, according to philosopher John Hare, Socrates' problem with the traditional stories about the gods gives rise to what is sometimes called the Euthyphro dilemma. If we try to define the holy as what is loved by all the gods and goddesses, we will be faced with the question, is the holy holy because it is loved by the gods, or do they love it because it is holy?
And again, I don't use these big words, the Euthyphro problem or whatever. We call it, nigga, stop talking about that bullshit. That's what we call it. That's what we call it around my way. Nigga, stop talking about that bullshit. That's what we call it. Look, that's a real problem, y'all. And we all know, right? We've all heard the challenges, right? If you're a Christian, if you're a believer, then you got to be okay with whatever God is okay with. And this is the part that makes me laugh in the face of religious people. Like, I'm sorry, but like, gang, I can't, gang. These are the people who literally are usually the most bigoted. Look at the motherfuckers who are literally, you know, I don't want to pick too much on our queer fan, but that is a very conspicuous bigotry that seems to be ruining a whole lot of people's lives. And that game is monopolized almost entirely by religious bigots. Now, I'm not saying it's all them. We know there's some atheists with the fucking hangover bigotries, but gang, religious ideas are fueling a lot of that. You know, they're the ones who have it in their creeds. They're the people who say it's okay to sell a rape victim to their rapist, and they've got to marry them. They're the people who are okay with genocide. They're good with genocide. Why? Because it's in their Bible. So they've got to come up with a reason why that shit was okay. These are the motherfuckers who you tell them you're a fucking atheist, and you know that their first question is, well, is rape really wrong then? I mean, because if you're an atheist and there is no objective standard of morality, then really what's wrong with rape? I mean, it may have been a little bit uncomfortable for the victim. She may have said it's against her consent, but I mean, you know, the rapist got his nut off. So I mean, and hey, the rapist got the rape victim got laid. So aren't we good to? Gang, these are the most nihilistic people ever. They will literally look you in the face and be like, well, if there is no God, what's wrong with me killing you right now and stealing all your shit? Like, never mind. Yeah, Jesus is the reason for the season. Yeah, like gang, like really, that's why, if gang, I have like 4 Bibles in this house. If you don't have a Bible, you need to get a Bible in your house, just so that when the crazy Christians start to actually act on their faith, you can have some religious propaganda around so that you can save yourself from them smiting you. Dangerous ass motherfuckers. Gang, these motherfuckers literally think God was justified in killing everything on the planet except for one family and one pair of all the animals. Again, we used to joke back in the day when we started this channel that God is the most like homicidal, genocidal, like, oh my goodness. So that is a serious problem. When you believe in God, you are fundamentally immoral. You're fundamentally immoral. I'm telling you, this human morality shit, gang, that is the only morality we have. And yes, it is relative. It could be subjective. It could be objective. It could be based in your empiricism. It could be based in your feelings. It could be, I don't care. These people are insane.
Socrates makes it clear that his view is the second. Okay, I know it's a little bit confusing. Another way to think of this would be like, are those pastrami wrapped cheesy jalapeno poppers out of bounds because Guy Fieri loves them? Or does Guy Fieri love those pastrami wrapped cheesy jalapeno poppers because they're out of bounds? Now for Plato, this indicated that there was something beyond the gods. A reality that
shout out to diners, drive-ins, and dives, man. Y'all know y'all love y'all some Guy Fieri, because we all wish we could have made a living out of touring the country and just eating at the dopest, like, I'm a diners, drive-ins, and dive person. It's like, that's my real, those are my real culinary preferences. Don't get me wrong, I love a fancy meal like the next man, but y'all gotta hit me with this. Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
Jay, I just want to know, am I holding this right? I think it's the way the president held it. I don't know. Wait. I'm sorry. Yeah. Fuck, I fucked that up. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. Right. And make sure you don't say 2 Corinthians, because if you say 2 Corinthians, it's off with your head.
I'm looking in here right now. Yeah, I got 1 Corinthians. I got wait a minute, where's 2 Corinthians? I don't fuck.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Here's 2 Corinthians. I got yeah, they walked into a bar, it says here. I don't know, somewhere. But anyway, yeah.
Gang, can I tell you the funny thing about Donald Trump's Bible pose is everyone in America pretty much that's ever been involved with the church instantly recognized how wrong it is. Now think about all the ways you see people carrying Bibles. You see people shove them in their purse. You see them holding them in front of them in the choir. They got it in the bag. They're clinching it. They've got it open, reading in front of them. It's up on the stand. They've got it split open and they're using it as rolling papers. I've used it as a drum kit. You use it as a big dampener. Sometimes use it as a drum pad. All of these ways are legitimate ways to carry a Bible. And you see a person doing anything, you're like, oh, the person has a Bible in their life. He found somehow the only way you don't carry a Bible it's like you there's a million options. How it's almost like you have to go out of your way to hold it in a way that there's literally no excuse, no situation, no circumstances, no reason at all anyone would ever hold the Bible that way. And everybody who knows anything about religion knows it the same way they recognize that 2 Corinthians flub. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. All right, here we go.
We can access with reason. And this is a way of saying that we need to look past traditional beliefs with a critical framework to try and see what's really going on. Now, some philosophers like Soren Kierkegaard have argued that religious faith is inherently irrational, putting it in opposition with philosophy's rational aims. In his book Fear and Trembling, he explores the irrationality of faith in the story of the binding of Isaac, in which God commands Abraham, who is basically God's number one boy,
"You're my number one boy,"
to take his only son Isaac up to a mountain and tie him up and stab him with a knife. And for those of you
that is the perfect reference. That was the perfect reference because this show is great. Gang, the other thing that's funny is I remember hearing this story in church. Many of you do too. And I was actually in church with my dad one Sunday when a sermon about that was preached. And I remember we didn't really talk about it afterwards, but I've heard stories since then of people who have actually asked their fathers after hearing that sermon, that passage preached about, if they would sacrifice them if God told them to. And some have been, let's just say, a little too upfront about what their Christianity would require of them. And you hear stories of people who literally couldn't sleep. Like they lost sleep for extended periods of time after that, worried that their father was going to come in the middle of the night and be called to sacrifice them. What is my point? This is one of those stories where, and again, gang, you let Christians tell you that you're taking it out of context because there's always supposed to be a bigger moral to the story. What the fuck is the moral to this story? Nothing about this story and moral goes together at all in any way, shape, or form. And it literally traumatizes children. And again, this is a perfect example of where we need to change the narrative. Because this is a story, we let them look us straight in the face as adults and tell us, you're taking it out of context. That was just a story about how no matter what God demands of you, you have to be willing to do it. But in the end, God will only let you do what is. No. You tell them that is a fucked up ass story that traumatizes children, gives them nightmares, and makes them worry their parents are going to sacrifice them. What kind of monster are you? Go ahead.
Best take on the story of Isaac is Bob Dylan's Highway 61. It really is. It's God said to Abraham, "Kill me a son." Abe say, "Man, you must be putting me on." God say, "No." Abe say, "What?" God say, you do what you want to, but the next time you see me coming, you'd better run. Abe said, where do you want this killing done? God said, out on Highway 61. It's just so
That's
great.
just yeah.
I mean, hey, say what you like about
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, but that's a great lyric.
I think great songwriter. This is just I love that he chose this story though, because it's one of those fundamental stories. Everybody's heard it. You heard it as a child. They all celebrate this story. Nobody's Christian indoctrination escaped this story. But now that we're grown and we're not believers, we really need to have a clear-eyed conversation with these people, because it's a perfect example. It's a perfect example.
I think the Bible is just like the key to good parenting. What are you going to do with that?
Exactly.
In case you don't know how it ends, and I guess this is a spoiler.
Oh, wait, let me give you another one, gang. How many of you heard this? Spare the rod, spoil the child. Yeah. Turns out in 2023 language, we call that child abuse. Yeah. And we we don't call on the Lord anymore. We call Child Protective Services when you do that shit. So again, it's crazy. Like biblical, when somebody talks about biblical parenting, like run and hide the children. Like, oh my
At the
goodness.
last minute, God is like, psych! Right before Abraham is going to
Psych,
belly
got
slice
him!
his son's torso.
What a
So he
prank.
doesn't die. In case you were worried, he doesn't die. Now, Kierkegaard's point here wasn't to be like, see guys, religion is dumb because God makes you stab your kid, but rather to show that faith can't be evaluated by the principles of reason we get in philosophy. It's just a different thing, grounded in faith rather than in pure reason. According to William J. Wainwright, early Christian thinker and guy whose name sounds like a type of spider, Tertullian, argued that the mysteries of faith.
But hang on a second. I wish I could tag in Lena here, because this is a perfect example of Christofascism, and it's why you really got to talk about the fascism at the core of all this. That is the fundamental argument of them, right? If God decrees it, then it's okay. Then the master of the master, the Lord of the lords, the holiest of the holies has commanded it, and so it must be all right. Think about even when you say to them, God's plan is real fucked up. Like, why did Jesus have to die for our sins? Why did he have to be dead why did he have to be tortured on a cross? Why did God kill everybody the first time around? Why did he flood the whole world? Why is he always burning shit? Like none of these stories make sense, right? And I was like, well, his ways are higher than ours. It's all part of God's perfect plan. Now, look, I don't know how unperfect God's plan is, but look, let me tell you something. Sam might be a cute little run around sometimes, but every once in a while he breaks the rules, and he knows he's breaking the rules. He knows he's jumping on something he's not supposed to be jumping on. He knows he's eating something he's not supposed to be eating, but he does it anyway. And when you forgive something, you just let it go. You just got to say he's a fucked up ass dog. He did some doggy shit. I don't know. You just got to let it go, because dogs will be dogs. And it's the same thing with people. When you forgive a partner or a spouse or an employee or a supervisor who does something wrong to you, you bear the cost of that forgiveness. In other words, gang, letting it go is exactly what forgiveness means. Nope. God's got to have something sacrificed, something perfect has to die, a virgin has to be inconvenienced, all this bullshit. Because again, his ways are actually what? Inferior to ours. Because even we can come up with, hey, God, if you really wanted to forgive us, why not just forgive us? Oh, and by the way, you're forgiving us for something that's a result of the nature you gave us in your perfect plan that we rebelled from, even though you made us with the nature that you knew would have us rebel from. Steph, where do you go with this? What do you do? What do you do? She's got to do all the things.
I think you got to get down into the nature of what the Bible is, what those stories are all about. They're foundational myths about a people whose deity is smiles upon them. So you have the story that you want to talk about. The story of Isaac and Jacob. There's or Isaac and Abraham. Let's talk about the Exodus, the story of the Exodus. Let's talk about the genocidal actions of Yahweh vis-a-vis the firstborn of Egypt. That's pretty cool shit. But it's part of the foundational myth of a people that is tying them to each other, right? It's binding the tribes together. So what you're talking about here in the whole of the Torah and Tanakh is foundational myths about how this nation came to be. A whole bunch of it being written after the nation was destroyed and taken off to exile in Babylon.
Yeah.
There's stories,
and I would love to have that
fucking stories, and they're not they've got nothing to do. The fact that people take these stories and imbue them with substance beyond the story aspect of things is really quite mystifying.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I love that too, because that's how we need to be talking about them. One, as foundational myths that would go a long way with the work right there, and then the other about this nation, that being the nation of Israel, in particular, the ancient Near Eastern nation of Israel or whatever, and AKA it has nothing to do with us right now here, especially in America.
But the ancient Hebrews are not unique in this. Indra. I think of Indra, the Hindu god Indra, as the personal god of a group of people in another place in the world and another time. So it's not that Yahweh is a particularly unique thing. Every nation had to have a god that was that sort of knit the politics together.
Yeah, and
it's a way for people to escape their own mortality, right?
Yeah,
it's a way for the priestly class to exert influence over time through the centuries to have this myth. And J.R.R. Tolkien said he was writing his whole cluster of myths around that stuff to provide a similar thing for the Anglo-Saxons. It's some of the stories are good, some of them are terrible, some of them are frankly pornography. Read the Song of Solomon; it's really kind of cool. But they're all just fucking stories.
Yeah, and I think that in a sense that makes them rife for sort of misadoption into our own times, because I think we look for a similar thing with the founding fathers and the sort of cherished, mythicized history of our nation.
Similar stuff.
And then they kind of go like this, and then people start reading them as one story. Yeah,
it's absolutely similar stuff. It's like George Washington and the cherry tree. Well, we know there was a George Washington. I mean, because the guy's there. It's people actually saw him, wrote down his stuff. We also know that the cherry tree thing was a bunch of horseshit.
Right.
Made up in the 19th century, long after the guy was dead, to give George Washington a certain degree of apotheosis, and that we've done that thing. People would talk about at one point. I think our nation has gone beyond, but the whole idea of the founding fathers and all of that we used to call that a secular religion that unified American people together, and I think that's kind of shattering right now. It's a pretty
no. Real religions don't play nice with metaphorical religions.
Just saying. That's just my take.
No,
on
no,
it.
I agree, and I think it's splintering deeply, like, because even now when they say certain things, even when they metaphorically say things like our secular, or our sacred traditions or our sacred institutions and stuff like that, I get turned off, right? Because I'm like, maybe we need to divorce ourselves from the sacred. Whereas even in my lifetime, there was a time when we were happy to say we all heard certain things to be sacred, and it didn't really have to be about your religion, right? So the way we're hearing these things is, I think, changing as a result of that.
Yeah, and part of the dichotomy is that you see on the part on the white Christian nationalists that their insistence that this is a Christian nation, when the secular religion of America throughout time has been focused on the exact opposite. That
Very true.
the Enlightenment principles that people like Adams and Washington and Jefferson were writing down were definitely not lodged in traditional Christianity, in particularly a right-wing kind of Christianity, and they all came out of different traditions too. I mean, you had the Puritan tradition of John Adams versus the Anglican tradition of Washington, and the deist tradition or the deist thoughts of Jefferson. I mean, this is not. But in this day and age, the white Christian nationalists are trying to destroy that civic religion and replace it with the mythos of. There was a guy a couple of days ago was basically saying that the United States was founded on the principles of the ancient Hebrew Republic. Now, show me where that's biblical. It's not.
It's not. That's just. But see, that's wrong with a lot of this. Just imaginary.
Reason. He wrote, "The Son of God died. It is by all means to be believed because it is absurd. And he was buried and rose again. The fact is certain because it is impossible. Christian philosophy is a contradiction in terms because Christianity's truths are impenetrable to reason." So, if
I just got to pause that there again. Christianity's truths are impenetrable to reason. That is the thing. That's why I really think that's what I mean when I say religion is dead. Is that quote right there? We can't. There's no way around this. No way around.
If they're impenetrable to reason, then they're not truths.
Exactly.
Why philosophers want to study it? Well, as far back as Plato's Euthyphro, thinking about religion philosophically has helped provide insights into truths at the heart of religious ideas. Now, fast forward to Karl Marx, who argued that the criticism of religion is the prerequisite of all criticism. Rather than meaning that it's good and cool to critique religion, Marx is indicating that all critical and philosophical thought needs to begin from analyzing religion, as it gives us insight into what people actually value. This is why even if religions are often grounded in irrational principles and mythological narratives, they can still be fruitfully analyzed by philosophers. Now, one of the best examples here is Descartes, known as the father of rationalism. If you've ever heard the line, "I think, therefore I am," that's a classic Descartes bar, which argues that your existence is made certain via your ability to think rationally. Now, this might not sound super radical in 2023, but this had massive implications at the time, as your existence was no longer grounded in the divine, but rather in the capacity of human.
I don't know how I haven't heard that before.
And if you're in America, I guess it still does sound kind of radical in 2023. But I digress. Now, this insight is at the core of the Enlightenment, where all types of artists and thinkers realized that humans might be all right and capable of doing some cool stuff without God. Now, what's maybe more interesting is that the same guy who put humans in the center of the philosophical universe also spent a lot of time talking about God. But not.
All right, I just want to quickly touch on something that I think is coming up here that's kind of a theme. Is I really do believe that proper philosophy useful, productive philosophy is always going to be, counter to religion, because that's what because it is making it, because it requires rationality, because you have to be logical, and what this really gets us to is science. People really sometimes think of the scientific method as this crazy thing that we invented with all these cool tools and experiments and technology, and now we have the rational scientific method. But science really emerges out of philosophy. Matter of fact, it was just called natural philosophy before it was called biology and science and all this type of stuff. People were naturalists. They just philosophized about the natural world. So those principles of empiricism that we have in the scientific method really do emerge from philosophy, right? Science is like, philosophy helped us realize, like, oh, we should measure things empirically and make sure that we have the same measurements and that those measurements are repeatable. That way we know what I think and observe, because I think I'm sitting in a room in front of a gray 12-channel mixer. I would also need other people to be like, yeah, I also see this gray 12-channel mixer, and then we could go from there. So what this is really saying is, you can use religion to study philosophy in the sense of what not good philosophy is. The same way in our class about evolution, we talk about what is science, and we use creationism as an example of how not to be scientific. We use it as an example of something that is inherently unscientific. And I think the same thing applies to philosophy. That doesn't mean you can't philosophize about religion, but even doing so, you're breaking from theology. Right, that's the difference. We could philosophize about the value of religion and what it tells us about human behavior and what we learn from these stories, and on and on and on. But when you do that, you're much more in the realm of cultural studies, where you're doing what? You're thinking about the religion rationally, right? And so being systematic in this way is just a big part of the reason that, like I said, religion is dead, because it just doesn't work.
Rather than talk about the person of God, Descartes, who was a Catholic guy living in a very Catholic France and a pretty Catholic Europe, was interested in the concept of God. Now, this is often referred to as the God of the philosophers. And basically, this God is the biggest and most necessary thing that's at the foundation of everything else. And this idea of God as a first principle was super crucial to Enlightenment theories of science and morality. Descartes writes, "There remains only the idea of God, concerning which we must consider whether it is something which cannot have proceeded from me myself. By the name God, I understand a substance that is infinite, eternal, immutable, independent, all-knowing, all-powerful, and by which I myself and everything else, if anything else does
Something we
exist,
have no
have been
evidence of.
created."
None.
Notice that he doesn't describe God in personified terms.
Go ahead, Steph.
So here's the thing with Descartes. Descartes, we were talking about science and all of this. Well, Descartes is responsible for Cartesian coordinates and all of this other stuff. He was, aside from being a philosopher, a mathematician. He had a lot to contribute to a whole bunch of stuff. We were talking about Sam Harris. We were talking about Richard Dawkins. We were talking about all these other people. But Descartes as a philosopher was a dualist, and did not take a skeptical view toward God, as was just illustrated. He didn't take a skeptical view towards the notion that consciousness could be an emergent property of the physical world. He insisted that there was the spirit and the flesh. And that's because it's a product of his time. Right. He didn't think along those lines. So in the same way, you see otherwise brilliant people not being able to distinguish shades of gray.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point in the terms of historical context too. I often sound dismissive of historical figures, and I don't mean to do that. Like I've been convinced about the educational value of the classics. In other words, you figure out what great books are by reading great books, right? And there are certain great books and great thinkers that have stood up to the test of time as sort of the great works. And I think that there's a lot of value to that, and they do contribute to our cultural conversation in the sense that they become shorthand for certain ways of thinking and bars and things, quotes and things like that. But we're always quote mining them, and the reason we're doing that is because they don't live in our times, and so it's a problem to not like a problem like you should lose sleep at night because people are lying to you. But if you don't recognize it and think critically, like people present their ideas as though what Descartes said then is what he would say now. And you got to remember, if these people were alive now in 2023 with the internet and the current state of science and they might be singing a whole different song and dance. And I like to think charitably about them, which is most of them were sort of ahead of the curve by leaps and bounds, or at least measurably, which made them the standout thinkers of their time. And so there's no reason to assume they wouldn't be doing their best to be at the forefront of current thought. And that should be remembered. So I'm with you, Steph. I think we can listen to these people charitably and think they were saying things that, haven't really fallen too out of line maybe with the way we discuss things now, but they'd probably just be talking about them in more modern terms if they had more modern evidence. I don't know. Steph looked over. I don't know if she's speaking up or what. Steph's got the crazy studio going. I guess I've been doing this to people for a while. Have you, Steph?
Monotheistic traditions usually do, but rather points out what we could call the ontological conditions of the concept of God. While Descartes was a good little Catholic boy, his description of God epitomizes a deist view, which is the idea that God is a necessary, perfect, and supreme being. Deists de-emphasize the view in which God is an actor in human events, which we see in everything from biblical accounts to Greek myths. I think if God was an actor, he would be Daniel Day-Lewis.
It was Paul talking about you. He's the prophet. He's the smart one. He knew what was there and he found me.
Who do you think God would be if God were to be an actor? Descartes argued for the existence of God not on the grounds of existential or spiritual necessity, but on the grounds that he didn't think humans could have come up with this idea on their own. He writes that, now all these characteristics are such that the more diligently I attend to them, the less do they appear capable of proceeding from me alone. Hence, from what has been already said, we must conclude that God necessarily exists. And just a real quick sidebar, if you don't like that take, look into David Hume on religion. I think you'll like
it. Gang, I'm looking at you. I can't shake it. I can't shake it, so I'm answering it. And I'm going Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And it's gonna sound very silly, but look, comes from a legendary family, played college football, right? Became the WWE champion, which I'm one of those people who the WWE champion is obviously way more important than the president of the United States. The WWE champion is obviously the leader of the free world. And then the man became a movie star. And if he wanted to run for president as a celebrity candidate, he could probably pull that off. So, somebody's got to play. I'm not going Morgan Freeman. I'm going Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, gang, if y'all have got better actor answers, let me pipe up and let me hear it. Oh, man.
like what he says better. He's an empiricist, not a rationalist, but check him out. But we might still ask, why does a rationalist care so much about God? Well, because the existence of an infinite and primary thing, God, guarantees that the world is intelligible and has some consistent foundation. He concludes it is clear enough from this that he, God, cannot be a deceiver, since it is manifest by the natural light that all fraud and deception depend on some defect. Descartes' God has very little in common with the type of being that, I don't know, a modern evangelical might pray to help them stop touching themselves at night. It is more like a foundational principle that grounds knowledge and scientific inquiry. Let us know in the comments if at any point in your life you masturbated and then felt really bad about it because you thought you disappointed God. We're not judging you, and it's not your fault that you thought that, but why not make it spicy in the comments? So
all right, gang. God, John, see, this is that thing in me that just makes me be honest, and then and it gotta be. Go ahead.
Have you ever splooged all over yourself?
I'm putting it in. I have splooged all over myself.
One of the funniest things. One of the funniest things ever. One of the funniest moments ever in my yacht racing career was our skipper. I don't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but made a masterful move, and we just, oh wow, this is great. And our ace tactician at the time looked back and quite coolly said, "Andrew, don't come all over yourself." I was like, oh fuck, man. I don't fucking think this. And it was like I'm sitting there laughing my ass off. I was like, hey, you know.
Carrie's the best. Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. I had to put it in the chat, gang. But look, this is another thing that, in all seriousness, I don't think we should overlook. Like, I actually think it's quite problematic to teach children and people to feel bad about touching themselves. I mean, can you think about a less harmful thing you could do? And I think a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, at least in my case, I don't know that I'll ever completely shake off the, you know.
I'm glad I didn't have a mouthful of gin, because I'll tell you what. You know what? I encourage everyone in the chat, everyone that listens to this, please do shake it off every now and again, because you know what? It is fun.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be able to have the kind of stroke necessary to really get off of this religious indoctrination in my sexual life. Oh God, that was the worst. I shouldn't have a microphone in front of me.
God, I'm so sorry. And it's worth noting that Descartes and Kierkegaard are two sides of the philosophy of religion coin. Because while Descartes turns God into a wholly logical category, Kierkegaard, around 200 years later, wants to turn God into a wholly illogical and existential category. While Descartes wanted God to be the foundation for rational thinking, Kierkegaard wanted to make God more of an existential concept, which helps us live more so than think. But this all leaves us with the question of why taking religion seriously is valuable for the rest of us. How can philosophy of religion be useful in a contemporary context where religion, and specifically religion's influence on politics and culture, is on the rise? Well, this brings us back to Marx. While some might immediately think of Marx writing that religion is the opium of the people, and determine that he thinks religion is dumb, it's important to consider the full quote in context. And honestly, I think that that's probably the second most misquoted or misunderstood line in 19th century philosophy after Nietzsche's God is Dead. But I've talked about that in other videos, so you can go find that if you want to. Right before the opium line, Marx writes, religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the side of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. In this sense, religion isn't the problem. It's the conditions that necessitate religion that are the problem. Marx is saying that religion is necessary in a world where people are suffering and without hope, a world that seems to lack heart and soul. And if your life sucks, you might turn to religion to find reason to believe that eventually, maybe even after death, it might not suck. He goes on to write, the abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. To call on them to give up their illusions about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. The critic
Y'all making me, man, y'all taking me back to college. Like, remember how nice it was to actually read some of Marx, man. Sometimes this man was just reading, you'd be like, God damn. Like that's what this whole thing needs to be about, y'all. Like this is what creates the divide, is because at least for me, like, that's part of the awareness, is like you're aware that, yo, I'm just this little insignificant monkey on this rock in a fucking sea of nothingness that is the universe, and I'm fucked at any given moment. And it's a lot, and all we've got is the systems and the relationships, basically, that allow us to help each other, right? That keep people gainfully employed, trying to feed people, trying to make sure families are all right, trying to make sure these kids are learning something. Like, it's very like, holy shit, we just have to deal with the real, and we need all the human resources we can muster. And so then to have these people who are so committed to the illusion, that's the great divide. Like, I think a lot of us recognize that condition. Like, we recognize, right? Because we try not to sugarcoat it. Like, yeah, I'm not here to tell you about some, bigger than us thing that connects all of us. Like, it's just us. It's just us, and doing the best we can for each other. But they're not ready. But at the same time, we can't rely on that illusion, right? Because the illusion is not helping us materially change the conditions. So we need their cooperation. Go ahead, Steph. You good? I'm good.
This is why I so appreciate folks like Dave Warnock. That religion answers questions about death, about reckoning with mortality, about the fundamentals of suffering, the fact that we all do, for various reasons. We're all faced with challenges, and religion deals with these ultimate challenges and provides sort of a well, it's not all about this life. You've got another thing to look at, whether it's the Western ideal of a life after death, or of eternal working it out until you escape the circles of the world and go into the universe or whatever the hell. It's a mechanism for not having to think rationally about the fact that the biggest probability is we're here for a short period of time, and there will be a point when we're not here. And how do you deal with that stuff? That seems to me to be, for some people, the usefulness of carrying on a religious belief. But to me, that's that's evading the very probable reality that you've got your one shot, and you should make it as meaningful to yourself and to others as possible.
Yeah, and I like to think that in this quote, Marx was trying to lay that out for that very reason. Like, the illusion's never gonna change the conditions,
He was
right?
a materialist,
Yeah, it is sort of a humane compassion to understand that, it's the answer to the answerless or whatever. But It's also
Well,
not
yeah,
just a
I mean, it's
solution.
basically that it boils down to what are we doing to each other?
Right.
You know, why do we allow uh, why do we allow the exploitation of one group of people over another group of why do we do that if
Yeah.
there's no meaning to it? And remember, Marx is like a 19th century guy, and we're talking about the hangover from the divine right of kings. I mean, most of Europe was governed by monarchs who came out of, who ruled by divine right, but maybe they became constitutional monarchs, but 100 years prior,
Hmm.
were ruling by the grace of God.
And all these years later, they're still in power. Some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
Crazy.
Criticism of religion is, therefore, in embryo, the criticism of that veil of tears of which religion is the halo. Now, Marx isn't saying we need to abolish religion because it's dumb and bad, but rather that moving past religious happiness can allow us to establish a world that creates the conditions for a real happiness. If people turn to religion to find hope in a hopeless world, Marx thinks building a just world will remove the necessity for religion. He's basically arguing that getting rid of the need for Pepto-Bismol isn't because Pepto-Bismol is bad.
Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Yay, Pepto-Bismol!
But rather, diarrhea is bad. And once we don't have the anymore, we don't need the Pepto. And in this sense, we can see some of Descartes' rational philosophy of religion, because Marx is interested in analyzing what the concept of God means in a society at a given time. But we also see some of Kierkegaard's existential philosophy of religion, in so much as faith comes from the real suffering of specific individuals trying to make sense of existence. Now, while philosophers like Descartes might not seem to share Marx's radical aims, they were still worried about the political usage of religion and how it was affecting people's lives. This is why for them, deism, according to philosopher Merold Westphal, can be called the religion of the Enlightenment. The horror of religious warfare and persecution hung heavy over European history. And when Enlightenment thinkers did not espouse an entirely anti-religious materialism, they sought above all to define a religion that would foster moral unity rather than immoral hostility within and among human societies. In general, something we see in Enlightenment thinkers, existentialist thinkers, and the Marxist tradition is that a society's concept of God reveals something about what human beings in that society value. And while sometimes it's God, other times God can be replaced with another supreme or sacred thing like money, power, nationalism, or consumer desire. And in this way, philosophy of religion is a useful tool to ask, what does a society regard as a transcendent ultimate value? And on the flip side, if we lose the ability to do this type of analysis, it's easy for new transcendent and religious systems to pop up without us noticing. As Theodore Zillikowski writes in Modes of Faith, Secular Surrogates for Lost Religious Belief, faith is of course not limited to religion. To believe in something, a deity, a nation, a race, art, sex, money, sports teams, appears to be a fundamental human need. Following all of this, philosophy of religion isn't just about religion, i.e. it's not just thinking philosophically about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, etc. Rather, thinking about religion is a way to understand anything which people treat religiously, whether it be sports, fandoms, political parties, Taylor Swift, or traditional religion itself. If we dismiss the philosophy of religion because it's like cool to be an atheist and stuff, then we risk losing the ability to do proper religious analysis. To once again quote Marx, the foundation of irreligious criticism is, man makes religion. Religion does not make man. Which means that when we attempt to understand religion, it's not wasting time understanding.
Again, for those of you that missed it, that is the fundamental reason that I consider myself a hard atheist. You know, people will say the difference between a soft atheist and a hard atheist, not that it really matters, is that it's soft, is sort of, I just don't accept any of the claims of gods or any particular god. And hard atheist is really sort of definitively of the opinion that I'm certain that there are no gods. My thing is the evidence suggests to what I would consider a beyond reasonable certainty that gods are the creation of the human imagination. And I think anything where all the overwhelming evidence suggests that X is the product of the human imagination, be it Santa Claus, you know, pixies, dragons, fairy dust, tooth fairy, right? Whatever it is, we say that that thing does not exist. And I think that is plenty reason to be equally as certain that there are no gods.
Flying spaghetti monsters. It's
Oh, go ahead, Steph. Go ahead.
I'm a little concerned about the framing of this sort of thing as a fundamental human need. I think I mean, people like shortcuts. That's true.
Like it's a
But
little too broad. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's almost providing an out that okay, you don't need to believe in a god, but you can you can support your team. Well, that's just that's a fundamental human instinct, but it's not. It's like I'm going to root for my nation, and so you ascribe all of this stuff to that, but it's not. I don't know if it's a fundamental human need. I think it's a shortcut. I think it's kind of a way. It's a way of excusing yourself from any sort of skeptical rationality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. It's.
So there's a way in which I think
I don't.
Baker's.
SR pointed that out in the chat, and I was like, yeah, something doesn't sit right with me for that. I do think that people confronted with the big questions of the biggest question being mortality, which one becomes more aware of as you become more decrepit. Yeah, I think it's a big thing, but I think it's kind of a cop out to say, uh, you know, the something as trivial as being a Man United or Boston Red Sox supporter is equivalent to faith in God is a little bit tenuous.
Yeah. I think to kind of put a point in it, like I think they're first gonna say I think bakers are always gonna say you really need bread. And it's hard for people to say my profession is not that practical or meaningful to your life, and maybe like people like me don't really need to be around. You know what I mean? Like, but I do think there's a way.
On the other hand, I do think that the owners of the Boston Red Sox would have you worship the fucking team because that means you're buying tickets. So that maybe there's an analogy there where the priests want you to come to mass 3 times a week. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
there is a bit of an analogy, but it's not.
Right. So I think, and I think that there are some times when, like, I think obviously there was an allusion there to Trump, and I think, a lot of us put them kind of in the cult bandwagon. There's a lot of extremist movements, and again, religion is still, a major player in terms of what's motivating people's political and social behavior, and to that extent, yeah, understanding why people find themselves in cults and the lengths they'll go through to deal with the cognitive dissonance is probably a productive thing for us to be able to draw upon. But then again, you wonder where does that fit into just sort of our regular old sociology and some of the other disciplines we have for understanding human behavior. And then, yeah, it does feel like a bit of a stretch to then compare some of those more mundane things to religion, and if that type of thinking is really ubiquitous and almost suggestible, then it's really not unique to religion. um, but um, but I do sort of take their point, and I kind of think that way about a lot of the secular scholars and scholarship we see in the sort of religious studies field and stuff like that, that because of the role of religion in our culture and stuff like that, their work um, is really important in sort of informing and shedding light where it does. But yeah, that's definitely a good critique of this, because it jumped out to some other people in the chat too. All right, let's let them wrap up.
Actually doing a deeper analysis of human values. And oddly enough, this is why many radical atheist philosophers like Alain Badiou, Slavoj Žižek, and Giorgio Agamben have taken religion seriously in their work, even though they're not validating the theological claims made by religion. On the flip side, the new atheist contingent ends up having political and social views which sometimes play right into dominant political and economic values rather than critically questioning them.
Don't you feel a little reproach to your so-called high-principled anti-war policy? Would that really have led to less violence, less cruelty?
On the other hand, atheist philosophers use religious and theological ideas to think creatively about what it would mean to make the world better. So it seems that even if we don't have an interest in religion as such, that the philosophy of religion is a set of tools that allows us to analyze any set of values or beliefs that are held with religious fervor and figure out what's really going on behind various cultural practices. And if we abandon the philosophy of religion, we risk abandoning our ability to see the ways in which even the most fervently atheistic among us are being pulled into all types of religious beliefs.
Cults don't ever go away.
I got to be honest with you guys. I'm not concerned about this. I really, again, I take the point, and again, I'm not trying to lead a charge against the secular study of religion, because I think it's just in the human experience with all the other things we should be studying. But what is interesting to me is I don't think losing it is anything to be afraid of, right? If you think about what we mostly value in a public school and in a public education, it would be probably, absent any real religious study or philosophy of religion. A lot of us think comparative religion would be great. We could get some of that in there. And again, it'd be great to use it as an example of what's not good philosophy, what's not rational, what's not science. But largely a lot of universities, they don't, you can sort of study religion from a cultural lens. I don't think there's anything that would stop you from studying the philosophy of religion. But certainly the religious disciplines themselves, the theological traditions, are largely falling out of favor in public universities, and everything seems to be okay.
Look at Christianity.
But what do you all think? Can religion be an important critical tool for philosophy? Or am I just trying to justify all the Sundays spent at church during my youth? Let us know what you think in the comments. We want to give a huge shout out to the most holy among you, our patrons.
It's like a bug, man. It's crazy. It's like religion gets into you when you're young. It's such a big part of your life. And then I think, given how dominant it was in your upbringing, how dominant it remains in the life of those close to you, and then the influence you see it having on the world, it becomes almost a comparably powerful experience that you're no longer a believer. So it is really weird in the sense that you can spend all those years in the cult, kind of under its spell, then get out, kind of break the spell, and then in many cases be more interested in really getting into it after you leave than you were when you were actually a participant. So it's just very interesting. I just think that's a part of life's journey. Go ahead, Steph.
SR has it in chat. Okay, he said it. He just said it there. He's pretty much he's saying pretty much everything is a religion. That's not true. That's a crappy definition of religion. I guess that's my.
Yeah, I agree with you guys totally.
I guess
100%,
that's
yeah.
my objection to this tip, because it's not quite the same. It doesn't have that fundamental grip. I mean, the Boston Red Sox winning the World Series. I'm sorry, I'm
That's
from
fine. You're
Boston,
from Boston,
so I
yeah.
have to be a Red Sox fan. Sorry, Cubbies, whatever. Sorry, Chicagoans, you suck. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's what I was
it's
thinking.
not the same as an expectation of seeing your family after you die, being reunited with all of those you love. It's not the same thing. It's not it's not the same as the salvation of your eternal soul. It's not the same as achieving nirvana. It really isn't. And you know, it's not a moral prescription to it's more of a contemporary thrill that your team won something, or your nation won something. It's not something based in uh, uh, any higher principle than you had a good dinner, you know. And I think that's yeah.
Yeah, and it keeps us from talking about the unique problems of religion. You know, if they can go, what
Right.
about your fantasy baseball
Well, if
team or
everything's
whatever?
religion, and I have no objection to talking about the comparative stories
Right.
uh, uh, that are features of religious belief, because they've all got to have stories. You got to have a narrative. You got to get a gimmick if you want to get ahead. To quote to quote Stephen Sondheim, to Julie Stein's song in Gypsy, yeah, there's that, and in that sense, religions are mundane, because they are in fact stories, and they are in fact things that emerge from human societies and human consciousness. But it's not just because other things do as well. They're not. It seems like a false equivalence.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely can appreciate that argument. And I think yeah, we could say a lot about that, because not only is the devotion or the actual expression not a dangerous comparison, so is of course the influence, right? Like the government isn't being taken over by Red Sox fans. You know,
No,
they're
well,
not
one
putting,
hopes not. I mean,
yeah.
no, I wouldn't think that would be a thing. It's like, by the way, I just noticed I've been backwards all night long for all you guys, but whatever.
Oh yeah, it flips it in restream.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's fun. All right, let's get up out of here. Steph, you have any closing thoughts about is religion dead?
Religion won't be dead until its adherents uh, come to a better understanding. There are things about religion that people are reliant upon,
Yeah, I don't think
and they're going to cling to it no matter what. You know, whether it's the hope of a better life to come, or the or there are religious people that don't necessarily hold to that, but believe in the precepts of whether they're cherry picked or whether they're actual. If they believe that their religion is mapping out a path to proceed upon, and they don't critically analyze what the implications of that are, I don't think religion per se is going to die, because as long as it has, religions depend on adherence. And as long as there are people that uh, uh, find a way to sustain beliefs, whether it's out of tradition, loyalty to family, loyalty to tradition. It's any of
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
No, is it dead? No, and will it die? Not until people think about it harder, I guess.
Yeah, so I don't think it'll ever truly die. I don't know that, and I don't know that there's ever been a humanity without religion. The things that we would consider, we would associate things.
I saw this movie called God's Not Dead. Pretty convincing. Yeah, right. Pat Boone. The best thing about that entire season, I don't think it was God's Not Dead Part 1. I think it was God's Not Dead Part 2, where Pat Boone is in the film. That has me convinced.
Yeah, I sometimes think I'm a different caricature of the atheist liberal professor from God's Not Dead. Um, but but yeah, I think things we would associate with religious traditions are sort of some of the hallmarks of human cultural evolution, right? We talk about human evolution, we're so often talking about um bones and stones, but uh it's really markers of behavior, right, that are really um sort of important. And so I don't, I think it's always kind of been with us. I do think we live in a critical time, though, because I think there could come a time where it's sort of, I think, functionally dead. I don't think there's anything inherently preventing it from becoming reserved to contain sort of to tradition, nods, gestures, myths of our past or whatever. And I think that what's interesting is that we live in sort of an unprecedented time in which I do think we, in so much of a sort of regular, everyday common knowledge, can debunk the claims so readily. I think that's a unique thing. I think we can't keep relying on the compromises of sort of prior generations, and these guys, the deists and the theists and these people, everybody. It's like, yeah, but we know some of these ideas aren't true now. And um I think the challenge is moving in a direction that limits the harmful influence of religion. And I think that that is possible because of the fact that the intellectual side, the scientific side, all of that is sort of dead. We can really count on those things to be firmly in the corner of the secular world. But the question is, what are we going to do with it?
I just thought of this, and I think it's kind of a critical piece. So long as religion can be used by powerful people and forces to maintain power, so long as religious ideas can be used to do such things as reinforce the Russian Orthodox Church being used by Vladimir Putin to distract from the murderous policies of any given regime, to refocus things upon morality issues such as queer people, trans people, in effect banning them from existence within an entire nation,
Yeah.
the Russian Federation, or Urban's Hungary, or Trump's United States, or DeSantis's United States. As long as there is a way that powerful people can use religion, it will not die, because it is not in the interests of people like that to see it die.
That's so true. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that, to me, is the most pernicious thing. I mean, I would love to be an optimist and think that people can see past the wokey doke, the people's going around screaming about woke people.
Yeah.
I would love to be an optimist, but I'm afraid I'm a pessimist in that regard, because so many people in so many different societies throughout the world will call upon religion to back their dictatorial, fascistic impulses.
Yeah, this
keep it going.
This is why I'm trying to always tell atheists that they hate you. Because I'm not optimistic about it either. But I think one thing that will help push people in the right direction is similar to, you know, issues you deal with as a marginalized group, is when you realize you're a marginalized group. When you realize they're coming after you, they don't like you. Guess who they're picking up today? Oh, your lucky number. And there's a weird way in which literally Steph, I can't believe I actually have to say this, but we are in the middle of major Christo-fascist nonsense at the highest levels of government. And somehow
it's a political force.
No, but somehow atheists think they're going to be okay. Atheists think that the problems they see for the women's and the blacks and the queers, somehow when they get done with their people, the atheists are gonna be cool. Yeah, the atheists just gonna be good to go. That is the only, because again, I'm with you. I'm not optimistic that the people in power are gonna see this thing. The only hope we got is that the motherfucking atheists that we can really reach and get to realize, dog, you are on their list, trust me. Right? And then put your name in the hat in terms of who's affected by the Christo-fascist takeover of the world's leading democracies. Then we'll have a real conversation. But again, I don't really think that's happening, because most people are, like that poem says, you know, you just don't do anything until it's too late, because there's nobody left when they finally get around to you. But yeah, that's why I'm on that tip. Like please help me help you. All right, gang, look, let's get out of here. We're gonna go hang out and gather a little bit before bed. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Tomorrow we're having a special celebration over on Maya Atkinson's channel. The link's in the description. So join us over there. I think 9 o'clock Eastern or whatever should be about the time. But we'll be having a celebration for Maya's 200 subs. So come on over. Make sure you're there. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Said I'm gone.